I want to basically just tell you about the current state of Urbit because honestly, I just think there's a massive information gap. I think there's way more going on in Urbit than anyone outside of Urbit realizes. Because whenever I talk to my engineer friends, and there's a lot of engineers who follow my newsletter, whenever I talk to people outside of the Urbit world, all of their kind of like questions and concerns and responses are just like really out of date. Like they just seem to genuinely not be aware on a factual level of how much is happening on the Urbit network and frankly, how badass it is. I should start by telling you a little bit about myself. Who am I? Why am I even doing it? I'm not like, I don't work for Urbit. I'm not on some payroll of a company. I don't work for the foundation. I don't work for Tlon. I'm just someone who recently discovered Urbit and really looked into it deeply and started to understand it. And then I started going to things and I'm like, holy shit, this is really fucking cool. And I'm a creator mostly. I write a newsletter. I do the whole like podcast newsletter, YouTube thing. I have my own little media brand or whatever. I was a professor for many years, then I quit to go independent on the internet. That's my story in a nutshell. And I have a nice little community of really smart, interesting, independent thinking people who follow me and hang out in the spaces that I create online. I'm here just because I'm building my community on the Urbit network. And I just see that it's way cooler than any of my other engineer friends realize. So I'm doing this literally just to share with my friends why I think it's way cooler than they actually even know. It is one of the unique features of Urbit that although I'm not being paid by anyone to do this, I don't work for anyone other than myself. The economics of the Urbit network do actually incentivize me to put in the legwork of trying to communicate how it works and why it's so cool and why I want other people to start building on it. If I can get smart engineers to join my community and build software with me and my people, then I'm going to benefit tremendously. Not only me, but my community. I'll be able to build really unique, interesting things that are amazing for me and my community. So already we can start to see there's a unique incentive system that's built into the Urbit network that motivates someone like me to actually do this evangelizing, even though no one's asking me to or no one's paying me to. So imagine if you were building an app where the early users, you don't have to give them some incentive program. You don't have to have some stupid affiliate system where you literally pay people to support you. Imagine that you're building an app and the users of your app are genuinely and intrinsically motivated to tell their friends and to make it better because they're going to benefit because they all share ownership in everything that's built in the community that they're working on Urbit. All right. This talk is really going to be geared towards sophisticated engineers who have probably at least looked into Urbit a couple times. The super quick TLDR, as you probably already know, is that Urbit is a network of personal servers. So every ship on the network, every individual on the network has their own server. Okay. And everyone communicates in a peer-to-peer way. I'm going to focus really specifically today on what types of apps are being built. And specifically, I'm going to try to convince you why it's really fucking cool right now. And why, if you're actually a good engineer and you really want to do something that changes the world and build badass apps that could last forever, that thousands and thousands of people could use for thousands of years, then Urbit is really the only serious player in town, the only game in town that even pretends to offer this kind of vision and this kind of promise. And it's already happening. It's already happening to a degree that people don't fully understand. So I'm just here to show you that. I'm here to bring you up to speed on what's currently happening and help you understand like how you could fit into the network if you are a talented engineer. At the end, I'll talk a little bit about next steps. If you are interested in this, we have capital. There are startups being built on Urbit right now. There's money waiting in the wings. There's teams already doing this kind of thing. And I'll talk a little bit at the end about if you think that this is something that you're interested in, you can reach out to me and I'll connect you with the right people. There's also a very interesting kind of go-to-market advantage when it comes to Urbit because we already have active, passionate communities. So I have something like 1,500 people in my community. It's growing at something like 15 or 20% every month. So I have one of the fastest growing groups on the network, which means if you're going to build apps in communication with me and my network, or perhaps even listening to and working with the people in my community, you're going to have basically you're going to have thousands of built-in users immediately out of the gate. Again, a kind of affordance that you're just not going to get that at the other types of platforms. For those of you who are thinking about breaking off and doing your own thing as an indie hacker or something like that, one of the biggest problems is if you don't have distribution, you can build an amazing software product out in the world today as a SaaS app, and you can fail because you're not able to get users. Okay. So there's another kind of really interesting kind of built-in advantage when you do this in this highly networked, community-driven way that Urbit is. Okay. So why you should build on Urbit now? Basically, when you first boot an Urbit ship, we call this the grid. These are apps. These are all apps that are being built on Urbit that already exist on Urbit. They've already been built. They've already been shipped. Okay. Now, remember, this is a peer-to-peer system. So there is no centralized place where these are held. These are individual developers, software craftsmen who have built these as laborers of love so far. Some of these are startups. Some of these are funded startups that you're seeing. Some of them are just individual artisan software engineers. Okay. This is the very first wave. Software sharing on Urbit just launched like a few months ago. It was like October. Okay. So this is brand new. Now, when you first boot up your Urbit ship, let's say you hop on Urbit today for the first time, you're not going to see anything. You have to import these apps. If you join my group, I'll show you how to do that. I have some tutorials and quests that you can do to get your first apps and start playing with them. So I have a bunch of apps. First, let's look at the Groups app. This is a flagship app that was built by Tlon. This was basically the first real app. It's basically like Discord. If you've ever used the Discord community app, it's like a Discord competitor, but in Urbit's own unique way. Okay. So first, let's look at the classic kind of Urbit experience. These are all Urbit groups. Okay. I've been on there for a while, so I have a bunch. Again, when you first log on, you won't see any, but I'll give you some to join. It's just like Discord. Right? It's channels. There are notebooks, collections, chats are the 3 different types. And I have a very active group. So here you're looking at a group log on my other life group, AKA what I call it, the imperceptible city. And even just, I logged on this morning, took the screenshot this morning, and there's 2 new posts. It's a lot of crazy geniuses, just badass people on the network who write really weird, interesting, but thoughtful stuff. So there you're looking at my open group log. That's a notebook where people can post. Anyone in the group can post. Okay. And remember, this is like pseudonymous by default. And so I don't need to know anyone's information. The first app that I want to look into in detail is an app called Pals. Okay. So this is one of the first apps that shipped on the network. It's very modest. It's not going to knock your socks off in any way, but I'm going to show you in subsequent slides that it's actually much more interesting and much more significant than you think. So all it is, it's a friend manager, right? So it's like this really basic little database that you can keep track of who's on the network. Urbit uses these weird names. Sometimes you want to remember, oh yeah, you want to make a little note on who someone is because it's sometimes hard to remember the weird Urbit names. So that's all this does is it lets you add a friend. And then if you add someone as a friend, they'll see in their Pals app that you added them as a friend and they can add you as a friend. Your first thought is, are you fucking kidding me, Justin? This is like some basic ass stupid like friend request system. Like, my God, Facebook does this so much better and so much quicker and easier and it's more powerful. Just hold that thought. That's a lot of people's first impression. This is just like a dumb peer-to-peer friend manager. Hold that thought. I'm going to show you why this is actually way more interesting than you think. The reason it's interesting is because you can build on it. So here we're looking at an app called Escape. All right. And this is built by a startup. Okay. That's raised capital. And they're building on as a serious commercial venture. Okay. They're building other things as well. But what Escape is, this app is basically, it's a Groups competitor. It's a Groups fork, if you will. The Groups app that I showed you that Tlon built for many years, they basically just copied it and they added a bunch of different tweaks that they think is a better way to experience Urbit. So if you go into the Escape app, it's like the Groups app, but it's different. They organize things differently. They put all the groups, which you saw a few slides ago, it was like squares. Here they put it all in the sidebar. So you can order it and filter it on the left-hand sidebar. And when you first arrive, you see these notifications for everything in your network and in the groups that you belong to. Okay. So again, it might not seem that significant, but what's interesting is that the Groups app for years, it was the default experience of what Urbit even is, of what you do on Urbit, the default experience. So already you're starting to see how interesting and radical this is, because what it means is that communities and software engineers together can fundamentally rewrite what it even means to be on Urbit. You can change the default. You can change everything from the very first thing. It can be rewired and customized without limit, because these to any degree that you want, and because these are decentralized, Turing complete computers. And that's really all it is. So literally everything is customizable from the ground up according to how communities want their computing experience to be. Now, Escape the Escape app starts to show you some of the unique affordances of what you can do building software on Urbit that you're not going to be able to do anywhere else. And this is the type of thing where you're only starting to see it, but you can see it. And I think seeing it in practice makes it click for people in a way that like people just still don't understand, that people are sleeping on. So I want to walk you through it. So for instance, if you're talking with someone in the Escape app, it looks like this. You can, for instance, now you can't do this in the Groups app, but in the Escape app, you can basically right click something and send that to any collection in any of the groups that you belong to. So here you see this little ribbon icon in the right. When you click that you can basically send that over to anything else on your Urbit computer, anything else on your personal server. And you can store in a private collection or in another group's collection. Even though the Escape app developers have no relationship to my group, the Polar Ketamine Core channel, that's a collection in the Other Life group. The Escape app developers have no access to that. It's not theirs. They never ask for permission. They don't need to have any collaboration or integration. I don't need to give them like an API endpoint. I don't need to do any work to allow the Escape app to integrate deeply with my Urbit computer. This is built into the architecture of Urbit. Okay, so already it's a very subtle example, but you can start to see, oh, wow. So if you want to build an app on Urbit, you get to automatically create functionalities that integrate deeply everyone in your community's personal computers without necessarily having them to, you don't need them to log into some new thing. They don't need to give you their credentials. You don't have to spin up a new database. All DevOps is abstracted out of the process. All you do is create code that represents intrinsically networked applications, and then you push it to the network. Anyone can download it, and anyone can use your software in intrinsically networked ways. And you don't have to take their login credentials. You don't have to hold their data. You don't have to manage a database. All of that DevOps goes away. You just create the code, you ship it to the network, and anyone can use it in intrinsically networked ways. And this is just this is just barely scratching the surface of what that looks like. Okay, there's going to be so much more. And this is why it's so exciting. And this is why I'm like screaming at my engineer friends, because it's like so early. Okay, this proves that it works, and it helps you see where this is going. It proves that it's real, and it helps you see it, but it's still so simple and early and undeveloped. There's a whole world that needs to be developed around this kind of really radical networked logic. I'll give you another quick example. If you are talking in a group using the Escape app instead of the Groups app, you can hover over someone's name and look at what you see. So here, my buddy Josh on the network, if I hover over his name, I get this little modal box. And look what it's doing. It's pulling in data from the Pals app. Remember when I showed you that Pals app, which is just like, it just seemed like this stupid, trivial little friend manager? Guess what? It's not so trivial, because all other apps on the network can build on that data, on that social graph. So actually the Pals app, which is just allowing people to build a social graph, basically, of friends, friend requests, and friend acceptances, you can go build a new app that does anything you want it to do. And you can automatically let people leverage their friends from the Pals app by just calling on the data of the Pals app. Okay, all of that is immediately available for you. The whole Pals social graph can be automatically pulled into any new app. And that's pretty fucking insane if you think about it, right? Think about it today. If you want to build any kind of networked app that involves any community networking features, what do you have to do? You have to create a database. You have to go get a ton of people onto your app, and you have to get enough people that it's interesting and worthwhile for people to get on it. And so most apps fail this way, especially networked apps, right? If you want to do anything that involves networking, most apps fail because they're not able to get that network effect takeoff. The cold start problem is really hard. How do you get enough users on your app that it's actually fun and interesting? What's so radical about Urbit is you can build an intrinsically networked app, and you automatically have thousands of users. And everyone's dying for new software, right? Everyone on the network is like so pumped. Every week there's like a new little app or something like that. So people are laser focused on hearing about what the new app is. So you build something cool on Urbit and you ship it anytime soon, everyone's going to know about it. Everyone wants to play with it, and everyone's social graph automatically moves in. This is the kind of thing that I talk to my engineer friends, and I'm just like, I'm pretty sure they just simply don't know this, or if they don't get the basics, because if they do, it's pretty mind blowing. And again, this is just one little example, the way that the Escape app is drawing on the Pals data, so that you can see, I see I'm already friends with Josh according to the Pals app, but I also have tags. That's my buddy. I know his full name. So I put his full name in my Pals app. Now that can be exposed. It's easy to see how this could be extended. This is just a kind of toy example. It's pretty cool, but it's just a toy example. It's just to show you this could be expanded in arbitrarily complex and fascinating ways. All right. So the next app that I want to talk to you about is an app called Studio. All right. This is basically a Substack clone built on Urbit. So what it lets you do is it lets you take any Urbit notebook. Remember, I showed you like this is a notebook. All right. This is in the open group log in the Imperceptible City. Is anyone in the group can post a new post. It's just like a private blog within the group. Okay. It's a notebook is what it's called in the Urbit terminology. The Studio app lets you turn any one of these that you have into a public facing website and email newsletter. All right. Pretty damn cool, honestly. I think this is what it looks like when you click in. All you do is give it some basic settings. It leverages SendGrid. So you just make a SendGrid account and then connect the API. It's pretty simple, and it works really quick out of the box. And what it gives you is a Substack basically. And it's completely shipped from your Urbit personal server. It obviously goes through SendGrid. The content lives on your personal server. You write your emails from your Urbit notebook. And what's really cool about it, so this is just an example of mine, right? It works, it's cool. But what's really interesting to me about it is how it's going to integrate with other things. So just to anticipate a little bit, something you should think about is that this Studio app, this Substack clone, is already by nature automatically has multiple author support, because anyone in the Urbit group who has the permission to post to the Urbit notebook, and you can set it so that anyone in the group is allowed to post. What that means is that anyone in my group can publish to our group Substack. Now, again, think about how many hoops you have to jump through to create a Substack clone with multi-author support. That's like its own programming problem. That's its own engineering problem. Takes multiple libraries and different work and stuff that needs to be managed and supported, right? On Urbit, it doesn't. So you can not just create a Substack clone, but you can have multi-author support without doing any extra work, okay? Now, this becomes especially interesting when you start thinking about DAOs. I don't know how many of you in the room here are crypto pilled, but I suspect many of you are quite interested in crypto. If you're like me, and like certainly many people in the Urbit community, you definitely think crypto is here to stay. And so if you think that crypto is here to stay and Web3 is the future, then you better be extra interested in Urbit. You don't actually have to be crypto pilled to be like Urbit pilled, actually. But if you're crypto pilled, then you are definitely going to be Urbit pilled, because what this means is that Urbit is basically, for communities, it's the most DAO aligned software stack for community, bar none. There's really not even a close second anywhere. Because if you have a DAO, and let's say you want to allow multiple contributors to publish to a newsletter or something like that, you can already see with tools that are already on the network that it's obviously going to be easier to do it through this than like Discord. Currently, if you run a DAO through Discord, everyone on your Discord server like published to a public facing website and newsletter, you have to use 10 other tools, and it's messy, it's nasty. Here, it's like literally all built in, but that's only just the beginning. That's what already exists, right? If you think even just 1 or 2 steps forward, this is where it starts to get really fucking crazy, honestly, because let me paint the picture for you. You're looking at Trent from Holium. Holium is a company that just raised capital to build apps on Urbit. All right. And they built a tool called Ballot, which is allowing groups to vote. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Ballot, but I just want to put some color into things, put some flesh into things. This is me and Anthony from the Combine in Austin at the Urbit Commons. And Trent is not an Urbit guy. He's not like, he was just, if you listen to the podcast with him on the Other Life podcast, he tells his story. He was basically building machine learning models for an oil company or something like that. I forget the details. You can listen to it on the podcast, but software engineer building machine learning models for some company. And he had a come to Jesus moment where it was, this sucks. I don't want to be doing this. I want to be using software to build like visionary communities and create structures for life to flourish, because that's what technology can be. And it can be, he just had this deep inner sense that software engineering can be so much more powerful and progressive, and it can be so much more empowering for human flourishing than the way that it's currently developed within current economics. And so he understood the appeal of Urbit. He didn't already know Hoon. He didn't know any of the weird esoteric Urbit stuff. He just saw why Urbit the future. He decided to learn Hoon, and he went to the Combine. He went to Anthony here on my left in the picture there. And Anthony got him funding, got him some investors. And now he has a startup called Holium, and they're building on Urbit. And they just shipped an app called Ballot. This just hit the network like a week ago, okay? It's early alpha. This is the first little thing that the Holium company shipped. Again, it might look little, but I'm going to show you that it's actually way more exciting than it might seem at first. We'll take a quick look at it. If you go into it, the best thing to compare this to is like Snapshot. For those of you who participate in any crypto governance, if you belong to any DAOs or you do anything in that world, you'll know a very common pattern right now is DAOs do voting through a tool called Snapshot. And all a Snapshot is, it allows for token weighted voting. So you connect with your Ethereum wallet and you can vote on proposals, basically. And that's how DAOs are governed. The Snapshot tool is responsible for governing billions of dollars. Insane amounts of money are going through tools such as Snapshot. This is basically a Snapshot clone or a Snapshot competitor, but it's built into Urbit, okay? And when you first log in, if you click into that top-hand column, what is all of the channels of all the groups that you belong to. Each one of those could be potentially a voting booth, meaning anyone in one of those channels can vote on things in this app. And so I just did like a toy example just to play with it. I created a little poll called "What is the Imperceptible City?" and I gave people 3 options. It was just a toy example to see how it worked. Okay. But a few things that are interesting about this. One is that just like how the Pals app can automatically appear and source a friend graph in any new app that you build, The Ballot app here is doing something similar. It's drawing on the Urbit network social. And what it's doing is it's allowing anyone who's in a group together to vote on proposals. So it's very similar to what the snapshot tool does, but it doesn't require any new logins. It's all already there. Why is that so cool? Apart from the fact that something like Snapshot is responsible for governing billions of dollars, what's really interesting is that because every Urbit chip is a Turing complete computer and they all network with each other natively, what this means is that you're going to see an app like Ballot being integrated into apps like Studio, let's say. This is just one example, right? This is where it gets really crazy in a way that like no other platform is anywhere near being able to do. You can imagine having a DAO or having just a community, having a group in Urbit, having a group notebook like I do in my group. That's what you're looking at in the top left there, where anyone in the group can post. But then maybe what you want to do is you want to let everyone in the group decide and vote together on whether or not a new notebook post is worthy of being published to the email list. If you have, a lot of subscribers, you want to respect your subscribers' attention. Maybe you only want to let your public email subscribers see the very best content being created in the group. How do you decide that? One way you could do it, and this is completely possible, it's inevitable. Someone just needs to build an integration that lets the Ballot app be used so that the result of a ballot vote triggers the publication of the Urbit notebook to the Studio app. It's absolutely possible. That's just one example. You could imagine the Ballot app being able to allow groups to democratically decide literally any number of things that you can do with a computer. There's literally no limit. This is just one example that you can see already on the horizon. You can even imagine that the Ballot app is used so a group decides which notebook post goes to the public email list, and then maybe it automatically pays the author of the notebook post. Absolutely doable. The Ballot app is going to be able to automatically and programmatically transfer money from one crypto wallet to any other crypto wallet on the network as part of the vote. Okay. So what we're doing is we're automating the Snapshot app in a way that's tightly integrated with communities and that can be connected to anything else that you do with your computer, basically. And that's where things get so heady that this is so fucking insane. This is so crazy and cool. And it's not speculative anymore. It's here. It's happening. As you can see, it's already happening. And obviously it's early. There's so much work to be, but it seems inevitable. I don't see how a network like Urbit can get this far over more than 10 years, see steady growth in the development, steady growth in the technology, and steady growth in the users and the culture and the people interested in using it, and get to a point where you get these new apps that you can already squint and see how they're connecting, see how they're leveraging these like really insane, intrinsically networked. I don't see how you can get this far and get to this point and this thing not fucking blow up and lead to all kinds of crazy, even more amazing things. Like, I just don't see how you can get this far and not take off like crazy eventually. And if you look at the network right now, this is what the actual user adoption looks like. Okay. I don't know what more I can say to engineers. I don't know what more I can tell you to be like, now is the fucking time. Look at this. It was pretty slow and linear for the past couple years. For a while, they were only adding a few hundred planets, new users to the network each month. And literally just in the past few months, since they shipped the layer 2 solution, all that means is it's now really cheap to create planets. Before, it used to be somewhat costly because it was on Ethereum. Now it's super cheap to create planets. And in the past, they've basically doubled the entire size of the user base in the past 2 months. The entire size of the user base that it took them years and years to build literally just doubled in the past 2 months. Okay. I don't know what more I can say to my engineering friends to be like, look, this shit is real. This is fucking awesome. It's crazy. I can't believe that people don't pay more attention to this and want to get involved in it. To me, this is like super self-evident. It's like, if you're a good software engineer, this is amazing. It's a unique moment in time where like it's super early and yet it's also de-risked because you see people are really shipping real shit that people are really using. So to me, it's like an insanely attractive opportunity. If I was a skilled software engineer and I was like working for a FANG company or something, I feel pretty confident that I would probably drop everything that I'm doing to learn Hoon. I would get involved in the Urbit community and I would make some of the first amazing apps to live on Urbit, because the people who do this early, I don't even want to speculate. I don't even want to speculate. To me, it's so heady that anything I say is going to sound crazy, or it might just sound like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid or whatever. The things I've presented today either resonate with you or they don't now. If you want to ask questions or talk about any of this, I'm happy to take some questions, but I'm not an engineer.
How hard is it to learn Urbit's programming language Hoon?
I recently tried to learn Hoon, right? And just to see how hard it was, because something that people always say about Urbit is, oh, it's too obscure, it's too esoteric, the language is weird, I'm not learning that, it's too crazy and weird. Well, look, I'm not an engineer at all. I'm like an idiot when it comes to that stuff. But after the first 3 sessions of Hoon School, I was able to Hoon code and ship it and push it to my Urbit ship, to a fake ship, to the test net basically. And I had working code that I was able to write myself and push it to my fake ship. And I'm an idiot. So if I could learn the basics of Hoon in a couple weeks and actually write code and push it to Urbit and it works, it's really not that hard. That's a common question that people ask. And I think if you're at all good at this stuff, like, you can just learn it. It's really not that bad. You can just hop on a Comet and join the network. A Comet is like a temporary one. And you can just basically go people will talk to you about all this stuff in great detail on the network if you want.
How do you ship apps to the network?
A lot of the developers right now do maintain GitHub repositories like normal, but what you do is you basically, when you write the code for your app, you push it to the Urbit network in a process that's actually very similar to pushing it to Git. So you keep files on your computer, and then you commit them to the network basically in a similar style as you do a Git commit. And that's how it goes to the network. And then any like code, they're called desks. You create a desk and you push it to the network, and then anyone on the network can search in the app grid that I showed you. You can just type, I need to know the name of your desk. Basically, I need to know the name of your developership. But if I know the name of your developership, all I do is I type in the name of your developership, and then I'll see any apps that you've pushed to the network.
What are the next steps to start building on Urbit now?
If you're really fucking good, you should just basically come to me and we'll get you investors, and you should build a startup on Urbit now. And you should focus on actually building something cool full time if you're actually capable of doing that. The capital is there, the interest is there. We need good engineers to take this seriously and build real shit immediately. So that's one pathway. If you're the type of person who is, really a good engineer, really driven, has a taste for living on the frontier, then you should send me an email or DM me or whatever, connect with me, reply to one of the event emails that you got before this session, and I will connect you to the right people. But there are, of course, other ways to get involved in more piecemeal ways. The next step down would be the startups that are currently building on need more engineers. Everyone needs more talent. If you're not really like the type of person who's motivated to build an app on Urbit now and be the leader and raise capital and go hard on it, then you should also just reach out to me, and you could possibly, if you're very good and eager to learn quick and get involved, we could get you on a startup that is currently operating, like Holium or like Terrell or something like that. All these startups need more talented engineers. So that's a possibility. One step down from that you can contribute to grants. The Urbit Foundation runs a grant program, and there are some bounties that you can find on the Urbit Foundation website. And you can connect with them, and that's a little bit more of a slower, moderate way to possibly get involved. And then the slowest or the simplest, the kind of most open, low level way to start getting involved would be to get involved with the Hoon School and stuff like that. And Neil Davis is a computer science professor who recently quit his job as a professor to go all in on Urbit, and now he's teaching Urbit as a kind of full-time gig. And so he runs a 6-week Hoon School where you get to hang out with him and a bunch of other people learning Hoon, and he'll walk you through a ton of things. I think if you're a little bit more talented and you're really good at learning languages and you can pick things up fast, someone like Trent from Holium, he was able to learn Hoon like pretty quick and got some capital and started Holium. So yeah, there's Hoon School. You can sign up for that, and there's going to be more rounds of Hoon School. You can totally do that and take it slowly from there. But honestly, I'm here to say, let's move faster. If you're good, let's move faster. Let's get you capital now. I'll fly you out to Austin, introduce you to some of the Urbit people. And I'm thinking about doing like a Hoon hacker house or something like that. I might rent a mansion for a week or something and invite people out to just like build shit together. I'm just like, I want to move faster is my own personal attitude. I just feel like now is the time. So, I see other hands up.
What kinds of groups are coming onto Urbit now?
Yeah, so there's a bunch. There's like art and culture groups, which to me is the most interesting, because for a while, Urbit was just like engineering people interested in software and tech and stuff like that. For most of Urbit's history, it was the people on the network were people who were interested in Urbit. It was this kind of meta self-referential thing, which is not totally fine. It's to be expected for that kind of a very weird, esoteric, visionary type of project. But now, one of the reasons why I'm so bullish on Urbit is because you're now seeing people who don't give a shit about engineering are coming on. People who just have badass communities. They're weird, interesting people who just are highly independent people. They're high agency people. They just want freedom. They want autonomy. They want to go to where the coolest, most interesting stuff is, basically. And when you have a technology network or platform that attracts those kinds of people who are no longer there to talk about software and engineering, they don't really care that much about that stuff. They just want to build amazing culture, and they are amazing culture. That's when I'm like, To be honest, that's one of the reasons why I like became high conviction on Urbit, because I was always interested in it. I was always paid attention. I was curious about it. I thought it was cool. But I'll be honest with you, like for most of the years I've known about, my attitude was like, oh, it's interesting, it's cool, but that's never going to work. It's never going to actually take off. Like I like to win. I don't like to do things that don't win. So I'm not going to get involved in something if I don't think it's actually going to take off. And so I just progressively, as I paid more and more attention, it's like, no, actually, like this isn't just abstract spec. This has real authentic energy behind it in a way that I'm just not seeing anywhere else. And it was really that realization that like groups, if you know the Wet Brain podcast, there's a group called End Project, which actually I did an interview with them that's coming out tomorrow on the Other Life podcast. So if you want to see like what some of these cool people are like, these are just like musicians, artists, graphic designers, like little interesting independent culture collectives are moving to. And it was really when I noticed that I was like, whoa, this actually could win like in my lifetime. And when I really like felt that and saw like this has authentic, non-techie, non-engineering cultural energy pouring onto it, that was when I was, fuck, this could actually win in my lifetime. And that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to try to help this. Like, I'm going to try to like be a part of this, move my community onto Urbit, and then do what I can to communicate this to people, because I think it's there. And I just don't know of anything more exciting than this. I can't think of anything. I haven't seen anything once I've seen this angle on Urbit, I'm just like, I can't unsee it. And there's no other game in town that's like even half as exciting to me. So that's when it was exactly that reason that I decided to really that I really felt high conviction when I noticed that all these other like cultural groups are moving on to it.
Is Urbit going to solve for fill in the blank in the future?
When you think about Urbit and you evaluate it, is like the scale of the vision is really pretty tremendous. So it's not a normal startup. It's not just a platform. It's not just a like community app. It's basically a new internet. It's literally an alternative architecture for a new internet structure, basically. And so what that means is the current internet that we have was built over many decades through many different iterations. Many different things were tried. There was this kind of highly competitive evolutionary process where the current internet manifested its current state through a ton of resources being poured into it, a ton of competitive dynamics. If you remember the browser wars, there are going to be, in the next 10, 20, 30 years of Urbit, there's going to be tremendous experimentation. A lot of things are going to fail. Some things are going to win out. There's going to be competitive dynamics. There's going to be arms races to make your version of Urbit faster than another person's version of Urbit. And there's going to be a ton of capital making bets on the best way to do this kind of thing. And some things are going to lose and some things are going to win. That's how the internet became the internet as we know it. We expect the same thing to happen with Urbit. There are many smart people trying to figure these things out. But of all the people I talk to who are smart and know about that stuff, there's no fundamental lack of confidence that it will be figured out. And one of the best things I can direct you to actually is like my podcast that I did. I did like a 10 series podcast with some of the leading engineers in Urbit. If you listen to the one with Philip Monk or you listen to the one with Ted Blackman, I ask them these types of questions and they talk about it from a more technical perspective. And so I think there's uncertainty around like what the winning solution will be to any of these things, but I don't have a lot of uncertainty personally that these things will be figured out. It seems like all the smartest geniuses in this network all share the conviction that these are all solvable problems and they will be solved, but there's uncertainty around how exactly, and that'll be worked out just like the current internet worked out through competition, experimentation, and some failure and some progress.
What is the business model for Urbit software companies?
So at the moment, because so much basic work needs to be done, the way that most of the current startups are operating is that people who are believers in Urbit and who own a lot of Urbit address space, we'll call them Urbit whales, if you will, just OG investors, people who own galaxies and a bunch of stars. There are hundreds of people who own galaxies and stars, and they're real believers that Urbit is the future. And these people are incentivized to give you money to build apps on Urbit. That's basically what it boils down to, because their address space is only going to accrue in value if people join the network and build things that make the network more valuable. So essentially, the easiest way to think about it is it's just crypto economics. It's now, before the current wave of DAOs and crypto, this stuff was obscure, or it seemed like a weird funding structure. But now if you're at all plugged into Web3, it's standard. This is a standard playbook, actually. They have scarce address space. You can think of it as a token, and to get things going and to incentivize building on the network, people will give you address space. So that's the short version. If you want to build a startup on Urbit, if you're a good engineer, come to me, let me know. I will put you in touch with people who will give you address space. So you will own equity in the network. And then you'll also be given some amount of personal runway to pay your bills or whatever. and you will build something valuable on the network, which will pay off your investors in part by increasing the value of their address space. And there are a lot of Urbit address space holders who are very eager. They really want to give money and resources to people who want to build apps on Urbit. So that's like that's one short answer, but that's only the beginning. That's just in the early days because a lot of basic infrastructure still needs to be improved. But we fully expect that there will be cash flowing businesses on Urbit as well. And here I think it's an interesting question what the equilibrium economics will be. And people have their own theories about this. People have different expectations, but I suspect there will be people who build apps and just charge money for the apps. We'll see how it pans out. We'll see, is it going to be recurring revenue? Is it going to be monthly subscriptions? Is it going to be one-time fees? Or is it going to be something else? Is it going to be tokens? Are individual app builders going to have their own tokens and then have their own kind of tokenomics within the Urbit network? That's possible too. This is an open question, but in the short term, like people will basically just give you money and capital and Urbit address space to start building if you're legit. And then later you might have your own. So that's how it's being done right now. Right now, there's no business model on Urbit where people are charging money and have like cash flow. Actually, one exception, honestly, is me because I'm basically a creator. So I'm not like a software engineer. So it's a different kind of business model, but this might be interesting for you to think about. I sell you can sell planets. You can also, like I have a newsletter. So it's basically, I let people pay me if they're like a fan of the newsletter and they want access to my community, they can pay me just like you would pay like a Substack author. So like my business model. So I live on Urbit. My community lives on Urbit, building on Urbit. If you want, in a way, I'm building community on Urbit. And I have a personal business model that's basically like your standard Substack author. So anyone who's like successful full-time Substack author accepts annual and monthly subscriptions because people like their writing. I basically have that also. But the thing that I give them is a unique cryptographic asset and personal computer in the cloud and access to a really badass private group, basically on the network. That's a cash flowing business model, and I'm profitable doing that. Yeah, there's not too many of me quite yet, and that's not the right like business model. I guess what I'm driving at is I think you're going to see a lot of experimentation. And I think this is like a very fruitful question and an area for research because I could imagine partnering with a software engineer, for instance, and maybe some software engineer and I get together. We decide that the engineer is going to build some custom app that's maybe unique to my community. And then maybe it becomes one of the unique selling points of what I'm selling for what on my Substack or whatever, like why people want to subscribe to my private community. It's because we have this fire new app that you can only get if you subscribe. And so then maybe we share the cash flow from that or something like that. But this is all blue sky. This is all, it's not obvious yet how what the equilibrium economics will be. I hope that answers your question in terms of like concrete, what's going on now and how to think about the future. What else? All right, I did only book you folks for about an hour. We are now across that. So basically, look, if this was interesting to you, just email me. Shoot me an email. You can reply to one of the event reminders that you got for this. You can find me on Urbit. You can fire up a comment. You can request, if you want a planet, I will give you one for free. All you have to do is go to imperceptible.computer and get on the wait list. There is a bit of a wait list because there's like real demand. Like people really want to get on Urbit. So it's taking me some time to get to everyone, but I will totally send you a planet. I just did this session on a whim because I just felt compelled to talk about it and share it. So I don't have any like call to action. I'm not like selling anything. I don't really have any fancy way to end this or to tell you what to do. Just reach out if this resonates with you and I'll set you up with the right people. And I'll probably be doing more stuff around this. Like I said, I'm really thinking about maybe renting a mansion for a week or a weekend or something like that and inviting people out to Austin to work on stuff or something like that. We'll see what happens, but these are the things I'm thinking about. So yeah, I just want to thank everyone for coming out.